journey of Burkina Faso has been marked by significant turmoil, from the exploitative grip of French colonialism to the volatile years following independence, the tragic end of the Sankara revolution, and the relentless grip of jihadist insurgency. Today, under the leadership of Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the nation continues to grapple with deep-seated challenges that demand resolute action. The modern history of Burkina Faso began in the early 1890s with the European scramble for Africa, a rush to carve up and divide the continent of Africa among the dominant European powers. For this reason, France's violent invasion and the subsequent establishment of French rule in 1896 was a very tempestuous affair. It involved military conquests, the dismantling of existing political structures through force, and the suppression of local resistance, particularly the major standoff that occurred with the powerful ruler Samori Touré, ending in 1897. Sometimes it involved forging alliances with native tribesmen and signing treaties to buy their loyalty. Following the Franco-British Convention of 14th June 1898, the country's modern borders were first created, and in 1904, the communities were integrated into the colony of French West Africa with its capital at Bamako, the capital of modern-day Mali. In 1919, French Upper Volta was established, named for the upper courses of the Volta River, that is the Black, Red, and White Volta. The French colonial administration imposed its authority through a system that relied on coercion, including forced labor and the exploitation of resources for the benefit of the colonial power. Any form of opposition was met with harsh measures, leaving a legacy of resentment and the disruption of traditional societal fabrics. On the 11th of December 1958, the colony attained self-government as the Republic of Upper Volta and became an autonomous republic in the French community. Full independence from France was attained on the 5th of August 1960 with Maurice Yameogo as the first president. While independence in 1960 brought immense hope, the early years were quickly marred by political instability. The newly formed nation inherited weak institutions and a fragile economy, making it vulnerable to internal power struggles. In the ensuing heat of personal wrangles and deep divisions, President Yameogo was overthrown in a military coup in 1966 and replaced by Lieutenant Colonel Sangoule Lamizana. This was later followed by a series of other military coups in 1980, 1982, and eventually in 1983, culminating with the rise of Captain Thomas Sankara. These developments hindered the establishment of a stable and democratic government. The power transitions often involved violence and further destabilized the country, preventing sustained progress on critical socio-economic issues. Thomas Sankara's arrival on the 4th of August 1983 brought a period of intense revolutionary upheaval. His first order of business was freeing the country from its French colonial past by renaming it from Upper Volta to Burkina Faso in 1984, meaning the land of honest men. Thereafter, Thomas Sankara launched an enormous, ambitious socio-economic national program for change, the largest the country had ever seen up until that time. Among his policies included the nationalization of all land and mineral resources, rejection of all foreign aid, particularly from the IMF and the World Bank, land redistribution to the peasants, a widespread literacy program, expansion of women's rights, and massive public infrastructure projects all across the country. Under his leadership, over 2 million children were vaccinated against various illnesses, with every village in the country having its own medical dispensary. Moreover, archaic practices such as FGM and forced marriages were totally outlawed. Thomas Sankara's policies did not stop in the socio-economic sector, however. Long before climate change was even a major topic, Sankara was already miles ahead in spearheading environmental conservation. In under 15 months alone, 10 million trees were planted to combat the expansion of the Sahara Desert southwards, Thomas Sankara's transformative policies were so successful that by 1987, Burkina Faso had even become self-sufficient in food production. While his reforms aimed at empowering the marginalized and achieving self-reliance garnered significant popular support, they also generated considerable opposition from vested interests, traditional authorities, and external powers which were uncomfortable with this staunch anti-imperialist stance. This internal and external pressure ultimately culminated in the violent coup of 15th October 1987, which saw Thomas Sankara and many of his allies assassinated by Blaise Compaoré, Sankara's former colleague who had helped him grab power back in 1983. France, Burkina Faso's former colonizer, was rumored to be the chief mastermind behind this bloody coup. This brutal end to a period of radical transformation plunged the country into a new era of uncertainty and marked a profound loss for those who believed in his vision. Compaoré, a close friend and key ally of Thomas Sankara, orchestrated the 1987 coup that led to Sankara's assassination. After seizing power, Compaoré's government adopted a policy of rectification. This action reversed many of Sankara's radical anti-imperialist policies. He sought to re-establish diplomatic relations with France and other Western nations, which Sankara had strained. He also re-engaged with international financial institutions like the International Monetary Fund (IMF) and the World Bank to secure foreign aid and loans. Compaoré's rule was characterized by the gradual consolidation of power. In 1991, he introduced a new constitution that allowed for multi-party politics, but critics argued that this was merely a facade. He won a series of presidential elections, often boycotted by the opposition, which gave him a long uninterrupted reign. His political party, the Congress for Democracy and Progress (CDP), dominated the political landscape and dissent was frequently suppressed. In 1998, the murder of journalist Norbert Zongo, who was investigating the death of Compaoré's driver, sparked a major crisis and highlighted concerns about the government's human rights record. Compaoré's economic approach favored liberalization and attracted foreign investment, leading to periods of economic growth. He also gained international recognition as a regional mediator in conflicts, particularly in Côte d'Ivoire. However, this stability and growth were criticized for not reaching the majority of the population, leading to widening wealth inequality and persistent poverty. His foreign policy was seen as a key indicator in his longevity, as he maintained strong relationships with France and the United States, who viewed him as a crucial ally in the fight against Islamic militancy in the Sahel. Compaoré's downfall eventually came in October of 2014. After 27 years in office, he attempted to push through a constitutional amendment that would allow him to seek another term as president. This move sparked massive popular protests, with tens of thousands of people taking to the streets of Ouagadougou. The protests turned violent, with demonstrators burning the National Assembly building. Faced with overwhelming public opposition and military scrutiny, Compaoré was forced to resign and flee the country, bringing an end to his decades-long rule. He went to exile in Côte d'Ivoire, and a military tribunal in Burkina Faso later found him guilty in absentia for his role in the assassination of Captain Thomas Sankara. The popular uprising that ousted Blaise Compaoré in 2014 created a power vacuum and fragmented the security forces. Compaoré's long-standing personalized network of patronage and control were dismantled, leaving a weakened and divided state apparatus. This created an opportunity for jihadist groups already active in neighboring Mali to expand their operations into northern Burkina Faso. Beginning around 2015, attacks by groups linked to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State, such as the Group for the Support of Islam and Muslims (JNIM) and the Islamic State Sahel Province (ISSP), started to increase. The insurgency initially targeted security forces in border regions, but attacks soon spread across the country, affecting civilians and infrastructure. This violence was fueled by a mix of local grievances, including ethnic tensions, land disputes, and a lack of government services, which the jihadists exploited to recruit new members. As the violence escalated, so did the humanitarian crisis. By the end of 2022, Over 1.9 million people had been internally displaced by the conflict, making it one of the largest displacement crises in West Africa. The attacks led to the closure of thousands of schools and health centers, disrupting essential services for millions. Jihadist groups frequently used blockades and attacks on convoys to cut off communities from food, water, and humanitarian aid, leading to severe food insecurity. The government of President Christian Traoré, elected in 2015, was widely perceived as ineffective in its response to the growing security crisis. Despite international support and the presence of French counterterrorism forces, the military struggled to contain the insurgency and public trust eroded. Frustration over the government's handling of the insurgency reached a boiling point with a devastating attack on a gendarmerie post in Inata in late 2021, where over 50 security forces members were killed. This event was a major catalyst for the coup of 24th of January 2022, led by Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba. While Damiba promised to prioritize the fight against the jihadists, the security situation continued to deteriorate, setting the stage for yet another power grab. Captain Ibrahim Traoré's ascent to power was a direct consequence of the widespread frustration with the previous military government's inability to defeat the jihadist insurgency. He came to power with a clear and singular mandate to restore security at all costs. Yet, the challenges he has faced since September 2022 are perhaps even more formidable than those of his predecessors. The security crisis has not abated. Indeed, jihadist violence has, and in some areas, intensified. Groups linked to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State now reportedly control over 30% of the country, and their blockades of key towns have trapped millions, creating a dire humanitarian situation. The number of internally displaced persons continues to grow, and essential services like healthcare and education have collapsed in many regions. In response, Traoré has adopted a hardline security-first strategy. He has rejected any form of dialogue with the insurgents and has massively expanded the controversial Volunteers for the Defense of the Homeland (VDP) program, arming and training tens of thousands of civilians to fight alongside the regular army. While this has mobilized a patriotic spirit, it has led to accusations of grave human rights abuses by both the state-backed militias and the regular security forces, particularly against the Fulani ethnic minority, a dynamic shift that risks fueling the cycle of violence and recruitment for the jihadists. Beyond the battlefield, Traoré has undertaken a significant foreign policy shift, positioning Burkina Faso as a fiercely anti-imperialist nation. He has explicitly rejected and expelled French military forces from the country and terminated decades-old defense accords. In their place, he has deepened ties with new international partners, most notably Russia, which has reportedly deployed security personnel to the country to train the military and provide personal protection for the inner circle. This pivot has solidified the nation's place within the Alliance of Sahel states alongside Mali and Niger, a move that challenges traditional regional alliances and draws accusations of an authoritarian trajectory. Economically, Traoré has embraced a form of resource nationalism reminiscent of Thomas Sankara. His government has nationalized some gold mines, which are a cornerstone of the nation's economy, and has vowed to keep the wealth within the country. While this has resonated with many who feel exploited by foreign powers, it has created uncertainty for international investors and could impact the long-term economic stability of the nation. Crucially, Traoré has also faced internal political turbulence. He has reportedly survived many coup plots and has responded with increasingly authoritarian measures. Journalists, opposition figures, and other critics have been arrested, intimidated, and in some cases, forcibly conscripted into the military to fight on the front lines, raising serious concerns about human rights and the future of civil liberties. In May 2024, his transitional government extended its rule for 5 more years, effectively sidelining the promised return to civilian rule, signaling a consolidation of military power. The path he has chosen is one of both radical transformation and immense risk, and the survival of the nation hangs in the balance as he attempts to navigate a complex and perilous landscape. Burkina Faso's path forward is fraught with risk. The country faces the monumental task of rebuilding a fractured state, addressing deep-seated grievances, and delivering on its promises of security and prosperity. The success or failure of Traoré's vision will be judged not only by its ability to defeat the insurgency, but also by its commitment to building a more inclusive and just society. The question that hangs over Burkina Faso is whether its current path will lead to a new era of stability and self-determination, or whether the cycle of turmoil will continue. Thank you for taking this journey with us. Your support means the world. If you'd like to stay updated on our upcoming videos, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Until next time, take care.